You've been yelling at horror movie characters for years. Don't go up the stairs. Don't hide there. Don't split up. Stop making noise. Just shoot him already. Every horror movie audience in history has watched a character do the obviously wrong thing and thought, out loud, what is wrong with these people? It turns out something specific is wrong with these people. Their nervous systems are doing exactly what a real human nervous system does under acute threat, which is almost the opposite of what we imagine we would do in the same situation. 6 specific horror movie decisions have real psychology behind them. Almost nobody has explained what. If you've ever screamed at a horror movie character for making a decision so bad it broke your suspension of disbelief, the actual psychology underneath their choices is doing something more interesting than just bad writing. Horror movies keep making the same 6 mistakes because those 6 mistakes are, in fact, what real humans do when their brains are hijacked by threat. Understanding them explains why horror works, why the characters keep making them, and, quietly, what would probably happen to you in the same situation, no matter how confident you feel right now watching from the couch. They run upstairs instead of out the front door. Every horror movie does this. The killer appears, the victim panics, and instead of heading for the exit, they somehow end up on the 2nd floor with nowhere left to go. This isn't laziness by the screenwriter. It's a documented phenomenon called cognitive tunneling. Under acute stress, the brain narrows the range of options it can consider from hundreds down to 2 or 3, chosen not by logic but by proximity, familiarity, and speed. The staircase is right there. It's fast. The victim's brain, running on cortisol, doesn't do a full comparative analysis of exit strategies. It grabs the nearest movement option and commits to it. Real people in real emergencies do this constantly. It just doesn't look ridiculous when there isn't a masked man behind them. They trip while running, every single time. Doesn't matter how fit the character is, doesn't matter how flat the ground is, doesn't matter that they're wearing sensible shoes. At some point during the chase, they will fall down, and every audience will groan. The physiology behind this is real. Under a full fight-or-flight cortisol spike, fine motor coordination degrades measurably. Your fingers shake, your legs stiffen, your proprioception, your sense of where your body is in space, loses precision. Under extreme fear, most people can barely dial a phone. Running full speed while looking backward and trying not to hyperventilate is well beyond what a stress-flooded body actually does gracefully. The characters aren't clumsy. They're running on the same nervous system you'd be running on, which has never been designed for smooth escapes. They make noise while hiding. The killer is 3 feet away. The character is under the bed, in the closet behind the door. All they have to do is stay quiet, and then their breathing goes ragged, or they whimper, or they knock into something, or the phone in their pocket buzzes. The audience wants to strangle them. Here's what's actually happening. The freeze response, documented extensively in trauma research by Peter Levine and others, is not a calm state. It's a state where the sympathetic nervous system is fully activated, but movement has been overridden. Breathing becomes shallow and irregular. The diaphragm spasms slightly. Muscle control on small movements decreases. The person hiding isn't choosing to make noise. Their body is producing noise as a byproduct of the neurological state they're in. Silence under threat is much harder than most movies would ever suggest. They investigate the strange sound alone. Something's downstairs. A window just broke. The dog is barking at nothing. Instead of leaving, they grab a bat and go check. Every audience yells at the screen. The psychology here is what researchers call normalcy bias, the brain's tendency to interpret unusual events as extensions of normal ones for as long as possible. Because updating your threat model is cognitively expensive. It's probably just the wind. It's probably just the cat. It's probably nothing. Real disaster survivors report exactly this pattern. In real evacuations from real fires, people spent an average of 6 to 8 minutes trying to figure out what was happening before starting to leave. Horror characters aren't uniquely stupid for investigating. They're uniquely visible examples of what most humans actually do when the evidence of threat is present, but the interpretation of threat hasn't landed yet. They split up. Someone always says it. let's split up. We'll cover more ground. And the audience knows immediately that at least one of them is about to die. The group psychology here is well documented. Panic in groups doesn't produce coordinated behavior. It produces fragmented decision-making, where each person's threat response degrades their ability to think collectively. Under acute stress, individual survival instincts override group strategy. Splitting up feels safer to each individual because it removes the burden of coordinating with another scared person. It's terrible collective strategy. It's understandable individual psychology. Real emergencies produce this exact fragmentation constantly. It just doesn't have a killer waiting to exploit it. They have the villain at gunpoint, and they don't shoot. This is the one that breaks audiences the most. The killer is down. The victim has the weapon. The obvious move is to end the situation, but the character freezes, hesitates, or lowers the gun, and the killer gets back up. Law enforcement research on freeze under threat has documented this specifically. In real armed encounters with trained officers, the freeze response can override the trigger response even when the threat is clear and the target is aligned. The brain's decision-making system, the prefrontal cortex, goes partially offline under acute threat. Trained professionals experience this. Untrained horror movie characters experience it constantly. The freeze isn't cowardice. It's the neurology of a system that was never designed for cold-blooded decisions during a crisis. Here's the reframe. None of the 6 horror movie mistakes are actually mistakes in the way audiences think. They're the 6 most reliable behavioral outputs of a real nervous system under acute threat. Horror movies aren't showing us stupid people. They're showing us, accurately and mostly by accident, what actually happens when a normal brain is asked to make life or death decisions in the moment. The reason the audience yells at the screen isn't that the characters are dumb. It's that the audience, sitting safely on the couch with a fully functional prefrontal cortex, has forgotten what their own brain does when the cortisol arrives. One thing worth naming, some horror movies really are written lazily, and some character decisions really are just bad writing. Not every mistake in every film is neurologically accurate, but the 6 above appear in nearly every horror movie because they're the ones that ring true even when the rest of the writing is sloppy. Audiences accept characters going upstairs, tripping, hiding badly, investigating alone, splitting up, and freezing at critical moments because on some deep level the audience knows those are the things a real person would do. The frustration comes from imagining you'd do better. You probably wouldn't. Almost nobody does. There's something quietly humbling about watching a horror movie and understanding what's actually happening to the characters. The people making bad decisions on screen aren't a different species. They're running the same nervous system you're running, hijacked by the same cortisol you'd be hijacked by, making the same range of narrow choices your own brain would narrow to under threat. The screaming audience is the fantasy. The tripping, freezing, whimpering, wrong turn-taking character is the reality of what a real emergency looks like from inside a human body. If you've spent years yelling at horror movie characters, this might be the moment to consider that they've been showing you something true about your own biology at a safe enough distance that you've been able to laugh at it. The characters aren't dumb. Their brains are doing exactly what a real brain does in a real emergency, which is a lot less coordinated than we imagine when we're calm. Horror movies keep making the same 6 mistakes because those 6 mistakes are what actually happens when a nervous system meets a threat it wasn't ready for. Silent awareness exists to name the quietly different ways your mind works, including the ways it would work in situations you've never actually been in. If that's the kind of channel you want more of, subscribe. The project only continues because people who recognize themselves here choose to stick around.